All right, we want to return to our top story. A Washington Post is reporting that President Trump revealed highly classified information to the Russian foreign minister and ambassador during a meeting in the Oval Office last week. And we want to bring in White House correspondent Zeke Miller of Time, who is in our Washington bureau. Zeke, first of all, what is it that you're hearing? We saw H.R. McMaster, the president's national security advisor, give a very brief statement reiterating what he had said in the written statement, denying this Washington Post report, and also saying you should take it essentially from the account of the on-the-record statements of people in the room, including himself, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, and Deputy National Security Advisor Dina Powell. What kind of position does this now put the White House in?
What was notable, given General McMaster's statement on camera versus the one he gave both the Washington Post and the White House had released an hour or so after that story published, was that was the first time he actually explicitly said it was false, but then he also qualified that as reported. So it seems that something happened here. There's some discussion of something, because they're not, going out, and the White House is not saying all of this is bunk. They're acknowledging that something of this sort was discussed. They're just disputing just how sensitive it was. Certainly the Washington Post account, based off sourcing from inside current and former administration officials, paints a picture, a very sobering picture, one in which the President of the United States himself discloses, very sensitive intelligence information that allies wanted to keep, secret, jeopardizing potentially those arrangements to infiltrate ISIS, and then also, with both the intelligence sharing and on the diplomatic side. And then it raises all sorts of questions about the way the president approaches not just classified information, but on the eve of his first foreign trip. He leaves on Friday for a 5-country swing. Is the president maybe being too cavalier about all of foreign policy?
Right. And Zeke, I thought you brought up a really good point here, that the wording of General McMaster's statement was very specific when he said the story that came out tonight as reported is false, and perhaps leaving a little bit of an opening there for questions about whether certain aspects of the report may actually be true. Tell us about the backdrop here, the context of this development as we wait to see what other reaction there might be from the White House, from Capitol Hill. In fact, we already know House Speaker Paul Ryan, in fact, through a spokesman, released a statement essentially saying he'd like more explanation about this. But this was happening at a time when there were already questions being raised regarding the firing of FBI Director James Comey.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, from the perspective of Russia, we can sort of look at it that way. You have questions about the president, who was very complimentary of Vladimir Putin and Russia all through the 2016 presidential campaign, only acknowledged Russia hacking very late in January, just a week before taking office. Has praised Vladimir Putin even in office, had Mike Flynn, who took money from Russia at RT, had the, fired Director James Comey, who was overseeing a counterintelligence investigation in terms of potential ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. And then it also comes in the backdrop of this is a novice president, the first president who hasn't come from a political or military career, about to go on his first foreign trip, 115 or so days into his administration, has made several foreign policy stumbles already, and here's just the latest version of that. So both, from the Russia side of things, it raises questions, but also the president's ability to handle complicated matters of foreign policy raises a whole other set of questions there.
Yeah, this has been an improvisational presidency by all accounts, but now I wonder what kind of questions this may raise among lawmakers in Washington, people on Capitol Hill that were perhaps wondering whether or not there might come a time when there may be implications of that improvisational nature of the presidency.
We're just starting to see some of that bubble up. I mean, you mentioned some of the statements from Speaker Ryan saying he wanted more information. Senator Bob Corker released a statement not long ago saying that there's a downward spiral happening with the Trump administration after the events of the last week. That's some, pretty sharp rhetoric coming from members of the president's own party. We've seen efforts by lawmakers to distance themselves from the administration, but we've yet to see that distance on really politically sensitive matters where it counts. You'll see it on procedural moves. You'll see it in terms of public statements that they're putting out on policy proposals. But we haven't seen that when rubber hits the road on sensitive matters. In part because if you look at Congress hasn't done a whole lot where some of this can happen. Where they can start picking up the ball is if they were to start using their oversight authorities on a president of their own party. That's a whole new set of political challenges for them. But also talking to Republicans in town, that's something they're acutely aware of by 2018. If Democrats do take back either the Senate or the House, just imagine almost the daily new hearings being announced. So Republicans are very concerned by this.
And Zeke, one last question before I let you go. It was interesting to see, as you noted at the top, General McMaster out before the cameras after he had already issued that written statement. And I wonder, when it comes to matters of national security, obviously he is the national security advisor, but in terms of getting advice and seeking out advice and taking advice and seeking out counsel on certain issues, is General McMaster the person the president turns to solely for those national security matters, or are other senior advisors involved in that process? What do we know about that?
He's definitely one of the voices in the room, but one of the things that talking to White House aides, the president himself has spoken about this in the past. He doesn't just talk to one person, he talks to a whole multitude of people and then sort of synthesizes their opinions, often playing one against the other to try to establish where he is on any given moment. That's often where we see some inconsistencies from the president, where one person told him X today and somebody else told him Y tomorrow, and both of those sounded like good ideas to him at the time, and then he'll change his mind because he's got new advice. The role of the National Security Advisor in the past has been to sort of be that synthesis and sort of bring the president essentially two options to choose from. General McMaster right now, given the way that the president is running his entire administration, this is really the president, not the staff, has General McMaster and others, Rex Tillerson, Jim Mattis, and others, basically being just equal voices in a room, rather than sort of flowing in a sort of a pyramid structure up to him.
All right. Time Magazine political reporter Zeke Miller. Zeke, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.